Hello.
Hi, baby.
Oh my god.
To my channel.
I'm filming today from the other corner of my living room. That is where I normally film, over there. But today, because I'm filming during daylight hours, I thought I would film over here. I am wearing these just fake glasses that I got. Why am I wearing them? Just for the thumbnail, really. I just thought it would look snobbish. I thought I would come in and talk about some books I have read that were recent releases. Two of them were published back in January. The first of which was Send Nudes. And then the other one was These Days by Lucy Caldwell. I'm pretty sure they were published back in January of 2022, but...
I don't know, and I don't really care, to be honest with you.
And then the other one was published maybe about a month ago, which was The Weight of Loss by Sally Oliver. These Days and The Weight of Loss are novels, and Send Nude is a short story collection. Oh, which one shall I talk about first? While I decide, I have my tea in my Lush Cinderella mug. Oh my god, look at that. Oh my god.
There are so many people out here who are so jealous of me that they can't stand it. It's really sad. It really is sad.
I'll talk about The Weight of Loss first, because that's been the most recent one. The Weight of Loss is Sally Oliver's debut novel. I discovered Sally Oliver on Instagram, and yeah, actually I will take these off because you can see the reflection of the window. I think I found her on Instagram back in 2020, like May 2020, which was when I first got Instagram. And I think when I started this channel, actually, I think she left a book review, so I followed her, and then the next post I think she made was one of those pictures writers take sometimes when they send their manuscript off. So hers was the manuscript she sent off of The Weight of Loss. Now it's been published, which is great. So it's been wonderful following the journey of that on Instagram. And that is one thing I like about Instagram. Sometimes you can follow authors and their process and stuff. So I liked that. So yeah, I pre-ordered it and got it. This book follows Marianne, and she is neurotic, and she has this boyfriend in London, and then things start going to shit when she finds this like long thick hair growing on her back, on her spine. So she goes to the doctor to get it checked out, and then they refer her to this clinic, and then she meets other people with the same condition as her, and the clinic gets really weird. So you follow the journey of that through the book, but the book also goes back in time between her sister dying and what leads up to her sister dying. So basically the hair growing out of her spine is kind of a symptom of I guess her grief. I thought the flashbacks were handled really well. Normally with flashbacks in books I'm like, is this really necessary? But in shorter books like this one, I think it's like just about 300 pages, the flashbacks worked well. I never felt like the novel was getting out of focus with itself, so that worked well for me. There's glimpses of gothic influences in the book. Like the book opens with this woman is she being buried in the earth while she's still alive, which is like a massive phobia for some people. That burying stuff is part of the therapy in the clinic. So if you have claustrophobia or something, you might find parts of the book really triggering. Do I want to say triggering for want of a better word? Yeah, I'll say triggering. There's also elements of like nature writing in it too. One particular scene made me think of Nausea by Sartre. There's a scene where the main character in that like reaches out to a tree, and it's like this big scene of like connection and breakthrough in that novel. I think if you like Nausea, you would like The Weight of Loss. And I think if you like Never Let Me Go, you would like The Weight of Loss too. The writing was also lush.
Just lush. Lush.
Sometimes I feel like the third person narration lingered a bit too much into Marianne's psyche, but overall, because it's a psychological novel, I understood why that was done. Is there anything else about the book? I feel like the ending might leave some readers disappointed, but for me, I thought it made complete sense in terms of the themes of the book. So if you've read the book and you're puzzled by the end, let me know what you thought. For me, in my opinion, I don't want to spoil anything for people, but all I will say is ego death. That was my opinion of the ending. So I thought it was great. Yeah, in the UK, it's called The Weight of Loss, and it's published by One World Books, One World Publications, and in the US, the book's called The Garden of Earthly Bodies. The US edition has a different cover, which I actually think is way better than the UK edition. And I also think the title is much better. The Garden of Earthly Bodies is such a lush title.
Just gorgeous, lovely, gorgeous.
Oh yeah, but the author spilled some tea over why that happened.
It is time for the truth, everybody. It is time for the truth tea to be poured and sipped, and it's all getting spilled today.
And the tea is that, apparently, allegedly, the publishers didn't like the title Garden of Earthly Bodies, so the author came up with The Weight of Loss. I have no idea why the publishers didn't like Garden of Earthly Bodies, because I think Garden of Earthly Bodies is a lush title. Because I feel like The Weight of Loss, if a lot of people were saying Waterstones, they just saw this on the shelf, they probably wouldn't be that drawn to it, because the title kind of gives like misery memoir vibes, when really the book isn't like that. Yeah, The Weight of Loss, that title makes me think of, I don't know, if you were going to a funeral director's, you know, no one's died, but you want to take out, you know, a funeral policy, and you saw a funeral brochure in the funeral directors. I feel like the funeral brochure would probably have a subheading titled The Weight of Loss, or something like that. So yeah, The Weight of Loss, I don't really like that title, but the US title is lush, lush, lush. So you might want to order the US edition. But the UK edition's fine, you know, it's the same book. Yeah, if she comes out with another book, definitely will be reading that. Was a great reading experience. I think I read it really quickly as well. Yeah, lush. I'll go with the next one I enjoyed, which was Send Nudes. Send Nudes by Saba Sams. I was actually at uni with Saba Sams, so on my undergraduate degree, she was in some of my classes. This is her debut as well, and this is a short story collection. So yeah, the stories follow girls and young women as they are in these intermediate stages in their lives. So yeah, there's 10 stories, and my favourite story was Snakebite, which was, I think, the longest story as well, actually. But that one was about a girl at uni in a city. I'm pretty sure it's Manchester, but I don't think the city's actually named. I don't think a lot of the places where the stories are set are named, actually, which gives the book a kind of freedom, actually, because you think this could be any city, but it's kind of clear the kind of city it is. So I quite liked that. Yeah, in the story Snakebite, this girl's at uni, and then she has this friend who's just a mess, and this friend kind of takes over her life for a while, and you follow how that goes. So that was my favourite story. What was so great about this collection was that all the stories actually read so well after each other. Normally when you read a short story collection, at least once you go through a stage where, you know, you might have other books to read, and then you have this short story collection to finish, and you're like, oh, can I be bothered to read these stories and get into another story? But with this book, that didn't happen, and I read them over a couple of days, and I was always really excited to carry on reading them. And I think it's only about 200 pages as well, so it's not too long for a short story collection. So if you want to read more short stories, this might be a good pick for you. What else did I love about these stories? I thought that they were flashes of just excellent writing. In the title story, Send Nudes, there's a bit where the woman is, she's had a shower. I'm pretty sure it's Send Nudes anyway. She's had a shower, and it describes the wet hair hanging against her skin as feeling like raw bacon. That was just a perfect way of describing that feeling. And there were other parts where it just described someone as like walking through a supermarket, threading the aisles, which was great. Normally in the stories, the girls and young women are given this predicament, and you follow whether they're gonna go along with it and ride it out, or if they're gonna subvert your expectations. So a lot of the stories are subversive. Like, I think in the story Blue for Ava, it's either Blue for Ava or Blue Forever. I think it's Blue Forever. And there's a scene in the story where the girls in it destroy, I think it's the father or the stepfather's photography equipment, and they throw it in a swimming pool. I think that scene just captured the short story collection perfectly, because it's these girls messing things up and doing these destructive things, but they're doing it to give themselves more freedom and to prevent them feeling pinned down, which I guess kind of goes back to the idea of sending nudes to somebody. Is there anything I didn't like about the collection? Now, I liked the first story in the collection, Tinderloin, which obviously is a play on the word tenderloin. I just don't like things like social media stuff in titles. I just find it a bit cringe. I think it's more like with books like No One Is Talking About This. Sometimes social media stuff in literature, just when it's from the off in a title, sometimes that just puts me off completely. But in the stories, the social media and like current world stuff isn't too loud in the story. It's just mentioned a little bit in passing, but it's not the main element of the story. So those contemporary feels in the story never dominate it. So I think even though obviously it has a kind of contemporaneous title, in 10, 20 years, I think it will still wear well. Yeah, I would highly recommend this. I think if you like Sally Rooney, you would love these. Okay, and now on to this novel that I won't spend too long talking about. And this novel is set in World War II in Belfast, and it actually follows several characters. This little bit here says 2 sisters, 4 nights, 1 city. And that makes it like you're only going to be following the 2 sisters mainly. But the book doesn't do that. The book follows loads of other people. I gave up on it maybe by about page 100 or something. Now, I hadn't read Lucy Caldwell before. She's won some really big short story awards in the UK. And I think she's written a few novels as well. I actually do want to read some of her short stories. But in this book, you follow the young women in Belfast, and the city's being bombed to shit. And I hadn't read any books set in Belfast, so I was excited for it. And the writing was really strong. There was one particular scene where this little girl and her mother, they get the train to Dublin or something. And because the train is coming from the Republic of Ireland to Northern Ireland, there are people searching their bags to check they're not like smuggling goods in, because there were rations and stuff, I guess. It described everybody on the train as frozen like mannequins, and I just thought that was a brilliant piece of historical fiction writing. But I actually gave up on it because it says it's going to be about 2 sisters, but it's actually about loads of different characters. Like the little girl with her mother, I was like, who is this little girl? There were flashes that I thought you could tell she was a short story writer, and they felt more like short stories, but that she was like trying to thread it into a novel. What is it, about 300 pages? By about page 100, I was like, okay, it keeps flitting back and forth between all these different characters, and the moment you get invested between one character, getting married or having lesbian sex or something, it flicks to a completely different scene with a completely different character, and I was like, do I actually care that much to do this? Because the book actually had me thinking about Regeneration by Pat Barker, and that is one of my favourite novels, and that is a novel that has quite a wide cast of characters. The chapters flick between the different characters, and in the hands of a good novelist, when the story does that, the mood and the story arcs, they contrast well, and it keeps your interest. But in this book, when the different scenes were changing between the characters, I was like, the moment I was just getting invested, the rug's been pulled from under my feet. So in the end, I was like, actually, I don't even care if these people get blown to bits, to be honest.
I'm sorry if that upsets you, but I don't pull any punches here, okay? I'm honest.
I'm pretty sure like one of the sisters probably gets blown to bits. Or one of the sisters' lovers gets blown to bits or something. But I was like, do I actually give a shit if these people die?
Hell no.
No, which isn't how I should feel reading a novel, really, is it? Yeah, I gave up on it, but I'm not going to chuck the book out. I think I'll come back to it at some point. I think the fact that it had a blurb from Hilary Mantel really sold me on the book, because apart from that, the title and the cover, these days, what a boring title. And a boring picture, really. You know, I do like the colour scheme, but the picture is dull as dishwater.
Doubt hurts more than the truth.
But have you read any Lucy Caldwell? If she has good books, then I will read some of her stuff. Yeah, those are some new releases or recent releases that I have read or partly read. What are some new releases that you have read recently or are on the lookout for? And if you've read any of the books I mentioned, let me know what you thought.
Let me know what you think. What did you hate? What did you love?
Alright, bye.